to producers. Thank you, forgot to do that. Let me start over. So welcome everyone for coming. Thanks all for attending our official rollout meeting for this Farmland and Water Quality Conservation Initiative. We're really excited to be able to provide some more funding and technical assistance to producers within the Ottawa County and neighboring watersheds. This is a quick housekeeping note. If everyone could please keep themselves muted throughout this presentation and also keep your questions for the end. Feel free to add questions to the chat box as you think of them, and we will touch those at the end of the presentation. So our primary goal today for this presentation is to familiarize everyone with this initiative overall and the resource concerns that prompted its development. We'll also provide details and logistics for getting producers signed up and also putting conservation practices on the ground. So the Ottawa Conservation District is the lead partner in this project. We're working very closely with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, or NRCS, and a number of other partners whom we'll identify later in the presentation. So for anyone on the line who may be unfamiliar with the Ottawa Conservation District, we serve as a local resource for natural resource management throughout Ottawa County, and we have a dedicated staff that works for a variety of natural resource concerns, from watershed health to soil and water quality and invasive species control. We also work very closely with the NRCS on many projects, and they are, of course, a federal agency within the USDA, whose mission is to provide resources to farmers and landowners and to aid them with conservation. So before we delve into the details of this initiative, just wanted to quickly introduce our team who will be managing this project. My name is Sarah Bowman, and I am a watershed technician for the Ottawa Conservation District, but for this project, I am the outreach coordinator.
Hello, my name is Alex. I am the project manager for this RCPP.
Oh, Kyle, you may need to unmute yourself.
Kyle, start over, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Hello, everybody. My name is Kyle Hildebrandt. I'm the soil conservation technician.
And Becky, would you like to introduce?
Sure. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. I'm Becky Huttinga. I am not with the district any longer, but I work for Ottawa County, and we are the partner that are managing the easements that will be a part of this project. And so that's my role in today's presentation.
Perfect. Thanks, everyone. All right, so we created this logo for our initiative, and our overall mission for the Farmland and Water Quality Conservation Initiative is to benefit long-term economic, social, and environmental health of Ottawa County and those surrounding watersheds. And we'll do this by providing technical and financial assistance to producers to support conservation efforts. So I think you've heard Alex mentioned this already, but this initiative is funded by the Natural Resource Conservation Services Regional Conservation Partnership Program, or also called RCPP. Sometimes we use our project name, the initiative, interchangeably with RCPP. So if you hear both of those, that's what it's that we're talking about. This funding program supports working lands conservation by providing localized funding for our cost share payments and also free technical assistance to agricultural producers in order to address local resource management. This funding comes from the same pot as NRCS EQIP funding, but it provides additional funding to a specific area for specific conservation needs. Through this RCPP funding, the Ottawa Conservation District will be leveraging nearly 7 million federal, state, and local dollars throughout 2026 and to address the unique natural resource concerns in Western Michigan, and including both surface and subsurface water concerns. We'll dive into those a little bit later in this presentation. So besides providing financial and technical assistance to producers, a major priority of the Regional Conservation Partnership Program is in the name itself. It promotes coordination of the NRCS conservation activities and funding with regional partners, which expands our collective ability to address on-farm, watershed, and regional natural resource concerns. So because of this, the OCD is committed to strengthening existing partnerships and synthesizing numerous partner projects through this project. And to create additional opportunities for farmers in Ottawa County and surrounding areas to be part of the solution by implementing conservation practices and funding agricultural easements. We have a large list of partnering organizations working with us on this initiative. So of course, along with the NRCS, we're partnering with the Ottawa County's Farmland Preservation Program, which is where Becky Hudinga is working through. And also the Ottawa County Groundwater Sustainability Initiative, the Outdoor Discovery Center, Ottawa County Farm Bureau, and neighboring conservation districts, and a number of local townships as well. Of course, our most important partners in this project are the producers themselves throughout the county. This initiative is completely voluntary, so it relies on the interest and dedication of the producers to get conservation practices on the ground. So not only are we dedicated to protecting and preserving the natural resources of the region, but we're dedicated to doing this in a way that also benefits the producers' land by increasing soil health, improving overall yields, and providing ways for farmers to manage and preserve their land for years to come. So with all that being said, the objectives of this initiative are to protect surface and groundwater quality in the area, improve aquatic and wildlife habitat, and to preserve manageable farmland. These objectives are based off of some of the unique natural resource concerns we face here in Ottawa County and the surrounding areas, specifically some of the issues we face for surface and subsurface water quality and quantity. So this localized concern over water resources, especially with our groundwater resource in this area, is a fairly newly realized issue, and it's highly unique within the state of Michigan. There's a pressing need to be able to address these issues now in order to prevent consequences for the region's healthy agriculture industry and also booming population. Our project area that you can see over in the map on the right-hand side there, it includes the watershed boundaries of the Macatawa, Pigeon River, and the Lower Grand River watersheds. These watersheds encompass all of Ottawa County and plus portions of Kent, Muskegon, Newaygo, and Allegan counties. Of course, the land doesn't recognize political boundaries, so utilizing these watershed boundaries as opposed to just staying within Ottawa County encourages a watershed-wide conservation that benefits the entire system. As we've mentioned, this area of Michigan has a few natural resource concerns we face, including groundwater drawdown and consequential upwelling of chloride concentrations, which occur naturally in our bedrock, surface water degradation, and fish and wildlife habitat degradation. Many of these issues are the result of our really fast growing population and rapid development in the area. So at this point, I'm going to hand this presentation off to Kyle, and he's going to go more into detail on these resource concerns.
Thanks, Sarah. The first resource concern I'd like to cover is our groundwater. And first, we need to look at our geology. So geology is something that I know a lot of people aren't thinking about very much, but by taking a look at it, we can see beneath the ground what gives us a lot of insights on strengths and opportunities that our land has to offer, as well as the threats and weaknesses that we need to consider when it comes to resource management. The area within the scope of the Farmland Water Quality Conservation Initiative is composed of multiple geological units with two separate aquifer systems. The base of our geology is formed by the Mississippian cold water shale. Above that is the Marshall Formation, where the deep aquifer lies, which is anywhere from 75 to 200 feet thick. This aquifer also has saline brines present and is overlaid by the Michigan Formation. Now, the Michigan Formation is a confining clay layer, which varies from anywhere between 50 and 400 feet thick. The glacial sediments on top of all these layers on the surface is where we get our surface water or our shallow aquifer from. And these glacial sediments also provide us with some great soils that provide really suitable land for growing some of the most high diversity of crops in our country. So two takeaways that I'd like us to take from our geology is that these layers control the distribution of the freshwater and connectivity of our groundwater resources, as well as the confining layers that impede the recharge of our freshwater to the bedrock aquifers. A comprehensive groundwater Research study was completed in 2018 by the Michigan State University Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering, as well as their Institute of Water Research, to investigate the groundwater quality issues, reports of wells becoming dried up, and analyzing our future groundwater usage. This study revealed that our groundwater resources are being depleted faster than they are able to be recharged. And the quality of available water is also on the decline as drawdown continues. At this point, we are just seeing the early signs of this issue affecting both our farmers and residents. Groundwater depletion in the central portions of Ottawa County is rapidly worsening, and the high rate of growth and development will only continue to exacerbate the strain on our groundwater resources. These maps note the change in the static water level in both the shallow aquifers as well as our deep bedrock aquifers. The areas within the central portion of the Ottawa County have seen the greatest change in our static water levels in both of our well types. In addition to wells drying up, depleted groundwater tables cause subsurface brines to become more concentrated in deep aquifers as the amount of fresh water is depleted. The increased concentration of salt in our groundwater is making it unsuitable to use for irrigation of crops, and producers in the county are seeking solutions. Note how the concentrations are above the natural conditions for both crop production as well as drinking water standards. These raised concentrations are impacting especially the low-lying areas in the county is upwelling of the saline brines. These chloride concentrations are controlled by two primary mechanisms. There's a natural discharge of the high chloride concentrations of groundwater into the bedrock aquifer, but then as we pump the water up into the onto the surface, the induced migration of the high chloride groundwater into the areas causes even more significant drawdown. Some of the key findings from this study show that our groundwater supply has been reduced, and the restrictive layers in our geography severely limits the bedrock aquifer from being recharged. This, in combination with the high chloride concentrations, threatens the groundwater supply to become further degraded. As Sarah mentioned before, watershed-wide conservation can benefit the entire system if done successfully. John Wesley Powell was a famous American geologist in the 1800s, and he once said that a watershed is, quote, that area of land, a bounded hydrologic system within all living things are inextricably linked by their common water course, and where, as humans settled, simple logic demanded that they become part of a community. This initiative is focusing also on surface water resources to improve our whole hydrologic system. The majority of streams within the 3 watersheds of our project area have some sort of water quality impairment due to non-point source pollutants. Listed by Eagle in their biennial water quality integrated reports, local watershed management plans for each of the watersheds have also listed impairments not identified by the state, but have either been quantified by monitoring efforts or observed by other local entities. Non-point source pollutants refer to pollutants that come from varied sources, primarily due to overland water flow that picks up pollutants and carries them down into local waterways. The primary non-point source pollutants found within our project area include E. coli, chloride, sedimentation, and phosphorus. While these pollutants are naturally occurring in the landscape, excessive amounts of each of these can cause their own problems in the surface water from agriculture, wildlife habitat, drinking water, and recreation. Because of high concentrations of our agricultural lands within this project area, we're looking at the primary sources of non-point source pollutants in the surface waters that are coming from our agricultural sources. Erosion of bare crop fields, improper manure application, uncontrolled livestock access to streams, and a lack of stream bank or ditch filter strips are just a few examples of the activities that can increase non-point source pollutants like sediment, nutrients, E. coli, and many others in local surface waters. So through this Farmland and Water Quality Conservation Initiative, one of our other primary objectives is to improve the aquatic and wildlife habitat in our area. These land cover maps show the drastic changes that humans have made in the landscape from 1800 to 2006. Ottawa County occupies somewhat of a unique location within Michigan that is referred to as the transition zone. This is an area where the northern and southern forest types come to overlap. This results in relatively greater diversity of plants and animals than either the northern or southern zones. Today, agricultural land takes about half of the land cover up in Ottawa County. By applying conservation practices on productive lands, we can enhance our skills to be stewards of the land, as well as increasing biodiversity, as well as creating new opportunities for producers to diversify their operations. Many of the wildlife populations that once thrived in this area have disappeared since European settlement due to the loss of habitat. Along with these endangered and threatened species listed here, many of our other aquatic and terrestrial organisms are severely limited due to their highly fragmented habitats. Now, these organisms are highly dependent on the amount of available habitat just to maintain their healthy populations. Improving habitat isn't just for bugs, birds, frogs, and other animals. These areas provide a multitude of ecosystem services, including water and nutrient cycling, pest control, and just provides a bunch of different potential for diversified yields for our producers. The contributing factors of our groundwater resources, impaired surface waters, and fragmented aquatic and wildlife habitat in the county provides the impetus for developing and implementing the Farmland and Water Quality Conservation Initiative. The Ottawa Conservation District will work with our partners and producers to implement the best management practices to address these regional resource concerns. With that, I will be handing it over to our program coordinator, Alex Svoboda.
Thank you very much, Kyle. So after going through the major resource concerns for this project, I'm going to discuss what our RCPP program is going to be doing to address those things. So our biggest goal is to support farms in conservation. So we are going to be providing financial and free technical assistance to agriculture producers to get conservation practices on the land. We're also going to be providing a significant amount of outreach and education on best management practices. And that includes attending events, making connections with farmers to get them involved in the program, and just helping to educate our community on the practices that are going to best address these serious resource concerns in our project area. So that leads me to one of the biggest questions of the day that I've gotten from folks, and that is what conservation practices are going to be funded through our RCPP program. If you're familiar at all with the USDA, they have a program called EQIP, which is the Environmental Quality Incentives Program. The RCPP program is essentially a copy of this. However, instead of competing with funding throughout the state, all of our dollars have been localized to our project area, which gives our producers a higher chance at getting funded. So we've taken the same practices that are in the EQIP program, and we've tailored our list to focus on our groundwater issues, our surface water issues, and then our fish and wildlife habitat issues. So we've got a bunch of practices, too many to name. However, on this slide, we have some of the most common ones, those being cover crops, tillage management, filter strips and buffer strips, fencing to keep livestock out of waterways. We're going to do a lot of work with control of erosion and water flow, and then of course, wildlife habitat plantings. At the top of the list, we have a practice called alley cropping. This one's fairly new. This is part of the USDA's Climate Smart Initiative, and we're pretty excited about this one and finding producers who are going to be interested in trying this out. Essentially, it is utilizing the areas between tree crop production as forage to improve pasture, improve soil, and to utilize more ground. So just one of the things we're really excited about getting connected with the producers in our area. On this next slide, we have an example of some of the work that we will be doing. This is a grassed waterway. And so as you can see, there's a significant slope in this field. It has a significant amount of erosion. The after picture shows installation taking effect. And what we've done here is we've managed the slope. We've planted a nice turf to keep the ground stable. And this not only protects our downstream resources, our freshwater resources, but it also protects the farm's livelihood and keeps that soil, which is their most valuable resource, on the farm. So in conjunction with all the conservation practices that we're going to be assisting farms with, we're also going to be working on preserving manageable farmland to reduce development pressure and to keep areas of our project area that are going to allow for recharge for aquifer, that are going to allow for protection of our wildlife habitat and our water resources. So to talk more about that, I'm going to turn this over to Becky. She is the Economic Development Coordinator for Ottawa County, and she manages their farmland preservation program. So I'm going to let her take it away.
Great. Thank you, Alex. Who is my slide person? Is it Kyle or Sarah?
It's going to be Kyle.
Kyle? Okay, just checking. Thank you. Yeah, so again, I'm Becky Huttinga. I'm with Ottawa County. Economic Development Coordinator is my title, but one of my primary focus areas is farmland preservation. So I'm just going to talk very briefly about that. It stands out a little bit separately from the other component of RCPP only because it's a slightly different pathway to put an easement on your land. So we're going to talk just real briefly about that. It's all part and parcel of this project. It's critical to this project, like you saw with the technical background that Kyle gave, and then the procedural practice background that Alex gave. It makes perfect sense if the federal government and RCPP participants are going to make a big investment in these conservation practices. Wouldn't it be great to put it on land that is going to be held in agriculture in perpetuity through an easement? Then you get, many more potential years of sediment reduction, nutrient reduction, water quality benefits. Land preservation in and of itself is one of the goals of the program, but to layer that up with these conservation practices really gives us the most bang for our buck. So I'm just going to talk really briefly about how the program works. There's going to be a lot of questions, and I'm happy to speak with anybody that's on the call right now about how it works and what the approach is afterwards. But we'll just kind of go through a little bit of the why and a little bit of the mechanics of the easement piece of it. So Kyle, if you would go ahead. Thank you. So this seems really dry to start out with, but it's an important piece. Our easements have to be held by a locally qualified program per the Farm Bill. So we have an ordinance that guides our program here in Ottawa County, and that will be important in terms of service area as we move further on. And just because it's super fun, this is one of our properties that is preserved in Blendon Township, which is one of our highly problematic groundwater issue areas. So you see some of the commissioners on there. Our board chair, Matt Fenske's in there. He's also on the call. Hi, Matt. Roger, I think, is on the call. And that is Carson DeHaan in the picture, who is the farmland owner there. So those are the kind of signs that'll be put up when we preserve some ground through this project. So go ahead, Kyle. Thank you. So why do we have this? We had easements. We've been doing easements in Ottawa County before we did RCPP. Why do we have that? Everybody wants to live here. Development pressure, fastest growing county in the state. But we're also very highly productive in agriculture, ranking 3rd in the state overall. we have to balance those two. So Kyle, I think there's an animation in here that doesn't work out very well because I'm not doing it. If you want to click, there you go. So thank you. So finding the balance for those two, that's why we put easements on farmland here in the county. We can't feed all those people if we can't preserve some of the farmland we want to grow our food on. So that's the whole reason we have this project in place. Our farmland preservation program has gotten very robust. RCPP gives us one more tool to use to put easements on land. So we're going to talk a little bit about how that works. If you want to go ahead, Kyle. So this is a piece right out of our brochure that explains how it works, because this will be a little bit different than, if a landowner wants to, put in filter strips, or if they want to do cover crops, or if they want to try the alley cropping. They're going to work primarily with the conservation district. They're going to go through NRCS. If they want to do an easement, they're going to need to communicate directly with our program at the county level. This is a farm bill program, but it's kind of a unique one because there's a different pathway to getting there. So it is like everything else that we're doing, voluntary. Landowners have to want to participate and want to sell their development rights, which is what an easement program does. So we create that easement through purchasing development rights. That landowner gets the money for the development rights, but they keep all the other rights to their land. So that's in a nutshell kind of what an easement is. There's lots of benefits to that. The farmer gets the money for it, and they oftentimes reinvest that into their property. But the biggest benefit is that land is permanently preserved for use in agriculture. And then we can put practices on that land that help wildlife habitat, water quality, conserving our groundwater resources, and all of those things that are the goals in this project. So Kyle, if you'd click one more slide, we'll show the back of this flyer. There we go. We are using RCPP money to put these easements on the land, but we still have to go through all of the eligibility requirements and process that our local ordinance guided program follows. So I have these flyers for distribution for those of you who are interested, but just briefly, you do have to be eligible. You have to have a certain quantity of land or make a certain amount of revenue off that land. It must be agriculturally zoned already, consistent with the local units. You do have to apply. Your application will be scored and ranked. Though we do have some added criteria we've included to be consistent with this program that will help us prioritize the areas we want to do the work in. So that's a part of RCPP, is including those additional scoring criteria that will help us focus our work. And Kyle, if you do one more click. This part is the part where it's just a little bit different. Under RCPP, if your property is selected, the beauty of it is like they said, the NRCS has directed that money already to us. We don't have to compete in the common pool like we ordinarily would, just like for EQIP. A landowner would want to do a practice and they'd be in the competitive pool. Well, this allows that landowner to become in a localized pool. So that's really helpful. So the funding piece of it's just a little bit different through RCPP, which is great. So if you want to go ahead, Kyle. Thank you. So back to that ordinance piece and the project area. So on the slide that was shown earlier, the watershed is the project area. The watershed encompasses all of Ottawa County, a little bit of Muskegon, a little bit of Kent, a little bit of, I think, a touch of Newaygo, and a little bit of Allegan. For the easement piece of it, you still need to be in a participating township because there's an eligible entity that must hold the easement. It is an easement restriction on the land, and so there must be an entity to hold and monitor that. So the projects that we do for easements have to be located in these townships. So that's where this is a little bit different. And that's barring anything new that might come out with the complete promulgation of the rules. NRCS doesn't have the full suite of rules for RCPP yet, so there could be some potential changes, but based on everything that I know, you must be located in these townships. And now you're looking at Ottawa County here, but Kent, I didn't see anybody that on the participant list from Kent. There may be now. Kent has a PDR program. They are an eligible entity to hold easements over there. Could we put an easement on land in Kent County under this project? We sure could. There would be a caveat that they would need to bring their own match, which is getting a little bit into the weeds. But we could put easements on land in Kent County under this project, and that's something that we can visit about. If there's anyone on from Kent or any landowners from Kent that want to do that, we can discuss that. But currently, those are the townships that we can serve under the program. So if you want to go ahead, Kyle. And these are just kind of a visual. This is a map in progress. It's not intended to be super clear, but let's just look at the pretty colors a minute. What this map reflects is a couple of layers. One is development pressure and soil types, prime soil types. And we're building on this map over time to help identify the priority areas where we should be preserving farmland, and almost as importantly, areas where maybe we should not be putting permanent conservation easements on farmland. And so we're going to add to this programmatically, globally over time. But specific to this project, Kyle, if you'd advance one more slide. We are also considering this map, which is one that was produced by our Department of Strategic Impact. So not only does the Farmland Preservation Program emanate from the county in the Department of Strategic Impact, the Groundwater Sustainability Initiative also emanates from our department. Paul Sachs and Matt Chappius, I believe, are both on the call, and they are kind of the cornerstones of that program. They're the go-to guys for it. So that's where this map came from, as we were considering how do we prioritize property as a part of this RCPP project. We're looking at the pink areas where we know we have supply issues in groundwater. And then we're also looking at the blue hashed areas where there could be high potential for recharge. So, maybe in the future, we could, find some practices that will help us recharge that groundwater as another way to help address the issues. So this is a map that we're using in our scoring criteria. This map, over time will be incorporated into our prioritization maps as well. So I just wanted to give you some examples of how we choose and prioritize. So one more click, Kyle. There we go. So that was a lot in a little nutshell. Like I said, it's a different pathway to easements under RCPP than it is the pathway to basically all the other practices that people might want to participate in. And that's okay. I'm available. My partner in crime, Julie, is available. The district does a great job of knowing the nuts and bolts of how it works. If anybody has questions, you can just come to me, but I like to use this slide because it kind of represents the whole enchilada. You've got the people on the back side of the table who want to grow their products in Ottawa County and have the water resources available to do it and come to the market and have people to sell them to. And the people on this side of the table want to have a great place to live, and they want to have great produce to buy, and they want to have clean water to recreate in and all of that. So this slide just kind of represents the whole reason that we're doing what we're doing under this project. So my contact information is there. Everybody at the district knows how to get a hold of me. So any questions about how it works? I see something in the chat. I don't know if that is a question or not. You can pop questions in there for me, or you can get a hold of me. Oh, no. Hi, Katie. That wasn't a question. So I will go ahead and pass it back now if nobody has any questions at this time.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that info. Yeah, we'll be able to take questions at the end from anyone who sticks around. So if you got something you're thinking of right now, just write it down and we'll do our best to answer it. So I'm going to shift gears back into kind of the conservation planning, conservation practices portion of this program and how that works. So we follow the 9-step conservation planning process that's put in place by the NRCS. And this ensures that we can offer a really thorough and strategic product to our producers in the way of both technical assistance and financial assistance, and make sure that those dollars are getting into the most meaningful places. So I'm not going to go through every step, but I'm going to give you kind of a general synopsis of how that planning process typically works. So first, the landowner is going to get in contact with the Ottawa Conservation District. And from there, we're going to set up a site visit to get to know the landowner, to understand their goals and objectives, learn about their farm and their production, and evaluate any environmental concerns that are on the property. From there, we're going to develop what's called a conservation plan. In that conservation plan, we're going to find solutions to whatever environmental problems or farm economic problems that we uncover when working with the landowner. And then we're going to provide some alternatives to correct those. It's really important to note that at no point does the landowner lose the decision-making authority for their property. So any conservation practices that we put forward or any solutions that we're working on, those decisions are entirely up to the landowner. We're just there to help facilitate those conversations, to help provide technical assistance, and to make sure that we're providing the information necessary to make good decisions. We're also non-regulatory and entirely voluntary. So at any point during the process, once we start developing that conservation plan, if a landowner says, you know, this just isn't a good time or not interested anymore, no one's held to complete that project. So once we develop the conservation plan, then we are able to submit that to the NRCS for funding. And once the NRCS approves, then we can award that funding to the landowner, and we provide the technical assistance necessary to get that conservation on the ground. So sometimes that's designs and engineering, sometimes that's connecting landowners with contractors or experts in the field to make sure that the work is done correctly. So that's kind of a general overview of how the process works. It can take several months, which is important. We want to make sure that we are looking at all the details and providing the best service possible. I'm going to talk a little bit about our timeline. So as of today, we're officially accepting applications for the funding through our RCPP program. We do have an application cutoff of April 22nd. Now, applications are not the same thing as conservation plans. The application is just about a 2-page document that records the producer's contact information, their demographic information, and it is the official request for assistance through the NRCS programs. So we don't have to have any of the conservation plan or any of the site visits completed at that point. We just need to have that document in by April 22nd if you want to get funded in this fiscal year. If we don't meet that deadline, we'll still help to develop a conservation plan, and we can just wait until the next funding cycle, which likely will be the very end of our calendar year or the beginning of the following calendar year, so 2023. So after the deadline of April 22nd, the next deadline here is in June. That's to have conservation plans submitted. So these are for the folks that had their application in on time. We're gonna get those conservation plans submitted to the NRCS for approval. Once those are approved, we'll be able to announce funding awards in August. And then by the end of August, we should have contracts signed and should be able to help landowners begin getting conservation practices installed. One other really, really important piece of information that we reiterate a lot and it still gets forgotten at times is you cannot start work on these conservation plans until there is a signed contract. That's something we're going to keep pushing on folks, keep reminding. So if you have work that you're starting now and you think, oh, you know what, I might want to see if I can get funding, we cannot fund anything that's completed prior to the contract. So just something to be aware of going into this program. Our next slide is just one more little housekeeping piece that we need to have done in this process, and that is to establish a record with the Farm Service Agency, also known as FSA. This allows us to process your applications, get you into the USDA system, and make payments to you for these conservation practices. It's a very straightforward process. You can get a hold of your local FSA office. You can call your local service center or a conservation district, and they can get you connected with them as well. What the FSA is going to do is they're going to verify your land ownership, get you into our database, and all they are going to really need to get started is either a deed or an active long-term lease. And they'll be able to assist you from there with whatever documentation they're going to need. So with that, I'm going to turn this back over to Sarah, and she's going to talk about some additional resources that we're going to be working on.
Thanks, Alex. So we will have a number of outreach resources available for those of you who are willing and able to help us spread the word about the program. So of course, we have a website, a webpage on our website, which the link is right up on here. And we'll also, in a follow-up email, kind of send that direct link to everyone to check out. On that website page, we'll share, we have all this info that we've talked about will be shared on there. We'll share updates on there as well. And then we'll also have a recording of this presentation uploaded to YouTube and then also linked to that page. So if anyone needs to refer back to things we've talked about, that website is a good place to check out. In addition to the website, we also have a few handouts. We have a one-page flyer, which we will also send digitally to everyone in a follow-up email. And we do also have some brochures, which we will mail a few out to our partners who have already agreed to provide outreach for us. And if anyone else is interested in having a few brochures in their office, just let us know and we'll send you some. In addition, we'll also be sharing social media posts about the program, of course, and we'll share those with our partners and anyone else as well who'd like to share, and some email newsletter updates and other things as they come up. Of course, some of the best outreach is word of mouth, and we're really looking forward to having the ability to actually speak with people face to face more in the next year or so. So a couple of upcoming events that we have are Project Clarity is having a luncheon on March 31st. I believe that's in Zealand. And there'll be a bunch of folks will be presenting information about projects going on, and we'll have a short presentation at that luncheon. On April 23rd, we will be having a table at the Earth Day Lakeshore celebration in Grand Haven. And also on August 18th, we have our annual field day, Cultivating Resilience, and we'll have more information there. So if there's any events that anyone online knows about that would be a good place for us to either present on this topic or to have a table at, we'd love to know. So we're going to be trying to hit up as many in-person festivals and events as we can this year. And we look forward to getting out there and talking with you all. We'll also be talking to some township boards as well as we're able to and give some presentations. So.
I gotta mute myself. Here's our contact information again. So feel free to write that down and reach out to us at any time. A couple additional dates to be aware of. So for those of you that are a part of our advisory committee, we do have a meeting on April 20th. And for those advisory partners, if you remember, I sent out a tracking form for the work that you guys have completed. And so we'll be needing to get those back by the middle of April. We'll send out an email to you guys again, reminding you, and if you need any assistance or instructions with those forms, we can get that to you. But with that, I believe that is the end of our spiel, and we're going to open it up for any questions you might have.
We did a really good job. No questions.
No question.
I don't think we could have done that good of a job. Somebody's got a question.
Kyle, you
This
gotta
is
unmute
Callie.
yourself.
Got it. Thanks. I got a direct message from Mike, and he was asking about alley cropping. There's a variety of different ways that you can do alley cropping. You can either integrate livestock into grazing where there's trees already established. There's one important thing that you need to follow, and there's the guidelines from the CAP certification. To follow the organic standard, you need to make sure you're having livestock out of your tree orchards 90 days prior to harvest. And then as well, there's testing that goes along with all that. So you can either introduce livestock into an established tree crop area, or you can start to transition your area where it's just pasture, and you can plan an alley cropping system with a variety of different tree crops, whether that's fruit trees, nut trees. There's a lot of possibilities with that.
I might have missed the deadline, but when I was looking at your deadlines, it said that it would be in early to mid-August when the growers got their approval to put the practices in. some of these, it's too late to put them in by then, let alone plan. So how long after they get approval do they have to have these practices implemented?
Typically, we plan this out so that they don't have to get it. Oh, I got it. Sorry. Typically, we plan these things out up to a year from the time that they are awarded funding for that very reason, because you're right, we're trying to establish buffer strips or install some of these practices. It's not the appropriate time of year to do so. So typically we schedule a year of leeway in there so they can get these things implemented.
Thank you.
Emily, you've got your hand up. Would you like to ask your question?
Yes, good morning. This is Emily Reinhart with Michigan Farm Bureau. Thanks for the information this morning. I was just wondering if I could be connected with someone on your team to promote it amongst our county farm bureaus with like social graphics or for social media, or put together an email out to the regular members in those areas. We'd be happy to do that. So if I can be paired up with someone to get that information, we'd like to help with that.
Yeah, Emily, for sure. We'll be sending that those things to you as we have them.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. I think there was a question in the chat. Let's see. Mike asked, have you guys considered wash water for agricultural processing facilities? How to help producers recycle wash water or treat before discharging? Alex or Kyle, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, these are all great ideas. They are not necessarily captured in the conservation practices that are available through the USDA's programs, which is the framework for how we're funding things. But yeah, it's a great thing to consider in terms of conserving water on farms, and certainly something that that water conservation is certainly something we're going to be focusing on in our outreach and education and best management practice types of events. Because yeah, you're right, it is very important, but it's not necessarily something that is going to be illustrated in the conservation practices that we.
And I just want to add on to that, just with a limited amount of practices that are listed with our RCPP, we're more than happy to interact with any producers, any agricultural processing facilities to help address any concerns that they have, whether it's excess water use or just anything that they have going on. We're more than happy to help out producers solve their problems on their operations.
Right. Just because there might not be practice that's eligible for funding, we're still available to provide the technical assistance to help mitigate those issues. Anybody else? Any questions? Questions for Becky on farmland preservation while we got her here?
Hey Alex, this is Paul Sachs with Ottawa County, Director of the Department of Strategic Impact, and I just want to jump in and say thank you to the district and staff and Megan Bowes for partnering with the county on this important initiative and for stepping up to the plate to handle this complex, large-scale RCPP program. There are a myriad of initiatives that we're pursuing to address this groundwater issue and water quality and farmland protection across the county. It takes a bunch of partners to do this work. And to elaborate further on some of the questions to Mike, answers to Mike's question, the district, it's amazing that we have the technical expertise of you all to help in these situations. And as we look as the county groundwater board and Department of Strategic Impact at the other opportunities to address looking at innovative techniques and partnering with Joe Bush, the Water Resource Commission office, and some university partners and other watershed partners. And we're in conversations actually with some agricultural processing facilities and other industries across the county that are thinking about water conservation and how they can be more efficient and how we think about water reuse. So those types of initiatives are definitely ongoing, and just wanted to mention that, and again say thank you to the district for stepping up on this really important project.
Appreciate you being here. Thank you. Anybody else got any questions, concerns? Like I said, take down our contact information and feel free to reach out anytime, and we'll get you connected with the resources that you need. I think there's a question in the chat. Is there a relationship? This is from Karen. Is there a relationship with salt applied during the winter and the groundwater issues? Anyone comfortable taking that one?
Yeah, sure. So there's a contributing factor to excessive salt use in the roadways over the winter time. Blueberry producers especially are sensitive to salt running off into their fields. So definitely is affecting producers around the area. However, the saltwater brines that are coming up from the groundwater is naturally occurring. So there's a lot of different avenues that salt can affect our producers in our area.
All right, well, I think not seeing any more questions. I think that's going to be the end of our presentation today. Again, take down our contact info, get a hold of us. If you have questions specifically on practices, please reach out to me or Kyle, and we will get you the correct answer, as this program does differ a little bit from some of the other USDA programs that are already in place. So I want to thank everyone again for joining today, and thank you to all our presenters and our team for working so hard and putting this together. And we're pretty thrilled to have this finally out and rolling and going into the community. So again, thank you very much, and we will share updates with all of you as we get them. So have a great day, guys.